Good morning and welcome back to Daily in the Word. If you're a regular viewer of our devotional videos, you probably already know that I'm doing a series on the issue of pride. This is the third video in that series. In the first video, I tried to discuss the definition of pride, or sinful pride as the Bible calls it, and the definition of humility. I said this about pride. Pride is that arrogant, overconfident, better than you attitude that looks down on others and wants everyone to look up to you. It is an overestimation of yourself, your talents, your abilities, and your judgment. And pride desires and really even expects that others see that your talents and your ability and your judgment is better than theirs. Humility, on the other hand, is the attitude of self-forgetfulness. It is knowing your place and embracing your role in the will of God for your life. Humility is about fulfilling God's purpose for your life with enthusiasm and zeal, no matter how you feel and no matter how others look at you or how you even appear to others. Humility is an attitude that gladly puts the other person's needs and the will of God ahead of its own needs and its own will. I think those are fairly good definitions, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over those again because that was video number 1. In video number 2, we talked about what I called the 4 general truths about pride. That is, 4 things I think we can all agree that the Bible teaches about pride. If you remember, the first one was, pride is detested by all. That is, all people hate a proud and arrogant man and hate a proud and arrogant attitude, and really, very few people want to be seen as proud and arrogant. So pride is detested by all men and by God. In fact, the Bible says it is an abomination to God. That was number 1. Number 2, I made the point that pride is demonic in its origin. It came directly from the devil. In fact, it was the sin by which he fell. Number 3, pride is destructive in its effect. Pride destroys churches, pride destroys homes, pride destroys businesses, pride destroys all relationships in the family and everywhere else. It is destructive in its nature. But the one I spent the most time on last week was pride is deceptive in its nature. It fools us. It hides. It sticks its ugly head up all the time when we least expect it. So what I want to do this week, and actually in the next 3 weeks, is talk about what I'm going to call the 10 signs and sins of pride. Now, I just happened to stop on 10. There could be a lot more things I could discuss because pride rears its ugly head in all situations of life. But what I want you to do, and what I think I should do, is while I'm talking about these signs and sins of pride, is to examine your own heart and see if this is an issue for you. Now, certainly not all 10 things are going to be in your life. In fact, if they are, wow, you really have a pride problem. And you may not recognize yourself in all of these, but I guarantee you this, you, like me, will recognize yourself in some of these. And those are issues as they come up that we should bring to God and get right in our lives. For instance, let me give you number 1. Number 1, pride causes a man to be boastful of his own supposed greatness. Sort of like King Nebuchadnezzar back in the book of Daniel. You remember King Nebuchadnezzar built a great kingdom, and then he got lifted up in pride. He looked at himself as the greatest of all kings. In fact, he said this in Daniel chapter 4 and verse 30. He says, "Is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty?" Wow. Nebuchadnezzar was quite proud of himself. You probably know the rest of that story where God humbled him and eventually he did come back to God. Pride makes a man magnify himself when he should be magnifying the greatness of God. And because of that, I see 3 great results when a man gets boastful. Number 1, that is it. The proud man is often a boasting man. He always has something to say and always has to have a better story or a better line. Romans chapter 1 verse 30 says this, "Backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents." That's a list of sinful. That's a list of sin that is in the unrighteous man's life. And I think it's interesting that not only does it say proud, but right after the word proud is that other word, boasters, bragging about yourself. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 2 warns us of this. He says, for in the latter times, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, and unholy. And you'll find that true today. The strong glory in their strength, the rich glory in their riches, the educated glory in their knowledge, the beautiful glory in their flesh. I found this to be true, that the proud man is always a boaster. Now, sometimes he may be a secret boaster, but he is a boaster. He has to talk about himself, and he has to receive the glory for the things he's done, and even for the things he believes he has done and may not have done. The proud boaster cannot stand to be ignored. Many years ago, when I was a youth pastor, I had a real problem in this area, and I remember my wife telling me one day about it. What would happen was, if you told a story, something that happened to you, then I had to tell a story about something that happened to me. And then you tell another story about something that happened to you, and my story would be greater. And it felt like I looked like I was always in competition in a conversation. And my wife warned me about that one day. She said, you know, you don't always have to respond to every story with the story of your own. You don't have to be the center of attention. Whew, that hurt when she said it. But you know what? She was right. Really, I wasn't telling the story. I was being boastful. I could do better than you, or I've had worse than you. And all my stories were about being greater than the last story that was told. So the proud man is often a boasting man, and because of that, the proud man sometimes is also a lying man. Pride has a way of making a man desirous of a high reputation and of the good opinions of others. If he cannot gain it by respect of honest means and honest labor, well, then he'll lie to make up the difference. And I found that to be true. Proud men often are lying men. But not only is he a boastful, lying man, the proud man is always also a critical man. When a proud man looks on the works of his superiors, he thinks that he could have done it better. And if he had done it, the end would have come out much better. Proud men have a tendency to believe that they could govern better than any ruler and judge better than any judge. In fact, they believe they could even preach better than any preacher. Kind of like Absalom, they think that they would make a better king for the people than the present king, even though that king in his situation was his own father. The proud man believes he could solve all the problems of the country and all the problems of the church if he was in charge. That's because proud men tend to overvalue their knowledge and far underestimate their ignorance. They're more concerned with speaking what they know than learning what they don't know. So, point number one, pride causes a man to be boastful of his own supposed greatness, and therefore he's often found boasting, lying, and criticizing. And if those are one of the things that you find yourself doing often, the root of that may be pride. So number two, pride causes man to believe he's the most important influence in the universe. And simply put, if all is well with him, then all is well. If he has troubles, well, then there are no troubles. Because the troubles of others, well, they don't matter. And they can't compare with his troubles if they do have them. Everything centers around him. He thinks everyone should have the same amount of concern for him as he has for himself. He's kind of like the prodigal's older brother in Luke 15. After his brother comes home and makes amends with his father, all the older brother can think about is himself. There's no welcome home. There's no glad to see you. He won't even go in the house to speak with his brother. He's only concerned with self. He says to his father when he gets the opportunity, "Lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed I at any time in thy commandment, and yet thou never gavest me a kid that I might make merry with my friends." That's the way of the proud man. He's always concerned with self. Everything is about me. He's busy seeking to please himself, not God, and not others. So he's not mission-minded, and he doesn't have a servant's heart. In fact, he struggles to share in the joy and rejoicing of others. He's not happy when others' needs are met. Well, unless he's the one who met the needs and the one who's received the praise for it. And therefore, no man is a true friend to the proud man unless they are his admirers. Isn't that the truth? He loves the best who honor him the most. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter if they're drunkards. It doesn't matter if they're fools. It doesn't matter if they're sluggards. He'll love them, and he will quickly forgive them if they honor and praise him. That's the way of the proud man. So if you would have his favor, all you have to do is let him hear you complimenting him among others. It means nothing to the proud man that others honor God if he thinks that they don't honor him. If they don't think he is good, then they will never be good in his sight, because he's an idol to himself, and the proud man must be worshipped. By the way, a proud man may indeed do his duty. I mean, I don't want you to get wrong and say, well, proud men don't do anything. No, they do. But after he does it, he will be more interested in what others think or say of him than what God thinks of him, because he's more interested in pleasing men than he is in pleasing God. He will seek their compliments by innocently asking questions. You've all seen that. I fall for that sometimes. Hoping for and accepting only good and glowing reviews. So how do you think that went? How do you think that did? And what he really wants to hear is, it went great. It was wonderful. He'll even send out scouts to find out what others think. He must know if they honor and appreciate his labor. If he can have this, the fire of his zeal goes out, because the praise of men is his reward. Even when he's praying, his eye is always on the hearers, all the while fishing for their love and approval. The proud man's honor is his idol, because he believes he is the most important influence in the world. Now think about it. If you're always thinking about self, and you're always thinking about how other people view you, and that is the focus of your life, the issue, again, is pride. So number one, pride causes a man to be boastful in his own supposed greatness. Number two, pride causes a man to believe that he's the most important influence in the universe. And here's number three. And number three, by the way, is a result of the first two. Number three, pride causes a man to trust himself. The prophet said in Obadiah, chapter 3, and verse 3, "The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, and thou that dwellest in the cleft of the rock, whose habitation is high, thou sayest in his heart, what shall bring me down to the ground?" You see, because the proud man trusts in himself, he believes his wisdom and his understanding is far greater than others. I'm going to stop here for a second, Steve. I've lost my paper. Let me go back here, okay? We're going to go back to number three. Number three, pride causes a man to boast in his own supposed greatness. Number two, pride causes a man to believe he is the most important influence in the universe. And number three, pride causes a man to trust himself. The prophet said in Obadiah, verse 3, "The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the cliffs of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground?" See, because the proud man trusts in himself, he believes that his wisdom and his reasoning are far greater than any others. He believes his understanding, he believes he understands things better than others understand it. He won't study God's word, but he will argue and question it when it disagrees with his reasoning or his ideas. If he can't understand a thing, then he believes the thing is wrong and worthless. He assumes that anything he can't explain cannot be explained or does not need explaining at all. Baxter said it this way in his devotional: "It should not be surprising that the proud and selfish sinners are often annoyed when they hear the plain and powerful preaching. Oh, how quickly will they feel it, and how impatiently do they listen, should the minister mention their besetting sin and plainly declare it as a sin against a holy God. They will fret and fume and storm at the sermon and go home with an angry passion in their hearts and spiteful reproaches in their mouths against the man of God. They will say, 'Why can't he preach love and grace and leave sin alone?' Don't they know that if the ministers of God would leave them alone, God would not?" That's the way of the proud man. He trusts in himself, but his trust in himself also causes him to believe that his justice and his judgment are greater than others. He believes that he would have done better than others he would have done things better than any others would have done them. He even believes he would do a better job in matters in the world than God has done. Though he may not say it, he thinks he would be more just than God. He believes that all events should occur the way he thinks they should occur. He thinks a thing is not right or just unless he reasons it to be right or just. Therefore, he's always questioning God, and in his heart, he actually thinks he's more loving and more merciful than even God. The proud man believes that his way is the only way. That should really not be a surprise, because if you trust your own wisdom and your own reason and your own judgment, well, it's reasonable to think that you would also trust that your way is the best way. He believes that he is solely in control of his own destiny. He thinks he's right and cannot be convinced otherwise. He loves independence and wishes to do everything for himself. I'm beginning to recognize myself in a few of these, probably like you are. He's offended when others attempt to instruct him or to offer him help. He believes he needs neither their help or their instruction. He listens to his instructors as teachers, not as a student, but as a judge. Let me say that again. He listens to his instructors and teachers, not as a student, but as a judge. I hope you don't listen to the preaching of the gospel that way. He's too proud to ever be wise because his way is the only and best way. I hope you can see in these 3 points how dangerous the sin of pride is that causes us to be boastful and self-important and so self-confident that we choose our way over God's way. Maybe in some of this you've recognized yourself. And maybe instead of just listening to a devotional this morning, maybe it's time that after the video goes off, that you, like me, spend some time in prayer asking God to forgive us for the sin of pride. I hope you'll join me next week as we continue our study on the signs and sins of pride. Until then.